Right, so thank you for joining, everybody. As I mentioned previously, today we're going to be looking at managed data protection and disaster recovery. For those of you that are not familiar with Saxis Group, we've been around now for around 25 years, and we worked with many of you actually that have joined the session today. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, we provide reseller and professional services for compute virtualization, hybrid cloud services, storage, cybersecurity, and the key topic what we're here today to look at, data protection and compliance. If you've been to one of our events in person before, you've probably seen the heavy the heavy presence of cyber resilience now as part of our messaging. And I think not only the prevention, but identifying and rectifying those types of cyber events, it's crucial to make sure that you've got the data protection in place to do that. So we've got some experts today from Assured Data Protection with us who are going to go through the Assured solution. That's Cameron and Justin, and I'll ask them to join now. And if you wouldn't mind starting, Cameron, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, hi guys. Good to have everyone on the call today. My name is Cameron. I work for Assured Data Protection.
And I'm Justin. I'm the Senior Sales Engineer at Assured Data Protection as well.
Hopefully everyone can see that okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll start by just giving a bit of a background and an overview of ADP and where we come into the picture with Rubrik. So for those of you that are not quite aware, we're a managed backup and disaster recovery service provider, and we use Rubrik technology to do that. So Rubrik came around 8 years ago now. I've been in the market leader in the backup space for around 5 years now. And they came into the market as a bit of a disruptor in terms of the fact that they came in with a full kind of built from the ground up, the sole purpose of ransomware protection in mind. So they're very different in terms of the security capabilities and the cyber resiliency that they carry, as opposed to the traditional legacy backup vendors that have been in the market for 20, 30 years. So at the time that they came around, the CEO asked us to become their first MSP. And we kind of fast forward today, we're a true global company servicing EMEA, APAC, and Americas. We've got around 450 customers worldwide, and we're currently managing around 120 petabytes of customers' data. We've got 3 data centers over in the States. We've got 2 in the UK, 1 in Amsterdam, 1 in South Africa, 1 in Indonesia, and we're just currently in the process of building 2 in the Middle East as well. So, as I mentioned, we solely only work with Rubrik. We don't deal with any other vendors, and simply all we do is we wrap that around and we provide a fully managed service. So our whole team of experts, are full Rubrik specialists, have all been in the backup game for many, many years. And as I mentioned, it's kind of there's one kind of sole reason that we chose to put all of our eggs in one basket and back the technology of Rubrik, and that's because of their whole kind of ability to provide that natively immutable backup solution. So the immutability, I'm sure, is a term that you've heard in the market for quite some while now, and it's a term that's been coined by Rubrik themselves, and because of their append-only file system, once that data has been written, it can never be changed. So customers will always have a copy of data that they can restore back from. And where we come into the picture is we provide that fully managed service as standard for customers. So we can provide things like the offsite replication, the managed disaster recovery. So in the event of an attack, we always have a copy of data that we can restore back from, and then we work with customers in order to restore that efficiently and securely. And then we look to build out a full kind of cyber resiliency plan with customers as well. So just to jump into kind of some pain points and conversations that we have and solve typically with customers is where we speak with teams that may be being asked to do more with less. So some IT teams there may be cuts, there may be guys that are working infrastructure or network, and they're being tasked with a shared responsibility of the backups. So being able to then offload that day-to-day management, or in quotations, headache of the backups, to one kind of team of experts who can take that pain away and free up a lot of time to provide teams to be able to crack on with something arguably a bit more exciting, can be a real admirable. It can be really advantageous for a lot of customers. And similarly, on the other end of the scale, we've got a lot of customers on the bigger end of the scale that have got a big kind of global IT teams that sit in different time zones. So being able to then consolidate that and free up the headache of having the communication breakdown across teams, and being able to consolidate to one location to know that the backups are being taken care of from one team, again, can free up that pain. And typically with any customers with a large data center footprint, they may have one data center in one location and a second elsewhere. Any customers that are looking to then save costs and potentially decommission one site, we can become that second location for them. So it saves them the headache of the running costs, which in the current market are considerably increasing all the time. And again, any customers that are looking to fall in line with any sustainability plans, they can then, on paper, in quotation, again, cut the CO2 emissions effectively by 50%, and we can pick up that other site for them. So there's a lot of advantages to that. And in terms of those big, heavy, hardware-intensive projects, as a company, we hold all of our stock hardware ourselves. So when it comes down to deployment timelines and quick turnarounds, we're extremely efficient in that sense. And to move on to the kind of complexity, this kind of ties into my first point, where you may have smaller IT teams that have got a lot on the plate. So being able to then onboard a new solution, then they can become application knowledge gaps. So being able to then onboard these solutions with teams and work with them step by step, and then be there and have access to the 24/7 365 help desk for any kind of configuration or deployments. And I think, again, with the rise in attacks and especially the complex attacks, it requires a complex safeguarding solution. It requires a solution that's capable to handle not only just backing up and protecting that data, but being able to be capable of navigating the risks. So you have complex solutions that can provide sophisticated errors, but these are only as good as a team dealing with them. So if there's any application knowledge gaps, or there's not 100% attention to detail across the configuration of the solution, again, it provides exposure, and it can limit the potential that you see out of having such a solution like Rubrik. And again, the pain associated with managing these remote locations, we can save time, we can save effort, we can save the resource of managing all aspects of the backups, whether it be maintaining hardware or managing all these remote locations. So to summarize and put it simply of what we do, we protect customers' data wherever that's located, whether it be on-prem, in the cloud, 365, and then through the use of Rubrik's security capabilities and our managed service, we're really looking to take that one step further with the cyber resiliency plan. So we can then build out things like the offsite replication, the disaster recovery, detect any anomalies within customers' environments, ransomware monitoring, sensitive data discovery. So there's just about taking that one step further. And there was a few stats that was released from Forbes not too long ago. So it's not anything to do with ADP or Rubrik. This is from Forbes themselves. So 80% of businesses that suffered a ransomware attack paid the ransom fee, and 40% of those suffered a reinfection within the next 6 months. And that's typically because if a ransomware group was to gain access to your environment, they may then release the keys and give you access after receiving the ransom payment. However, they'll sell that key on the dark web to another attack group that can then go through the same processes. So yeah, so 40% will suffer some kind of reinfection within the next 6 months. 31% of those couldn't recover even after gaining access to their backups. And 21% of those ceased to trade. So even though they've paid the ransom, they were given the keys back to their environment, they couldn't then get back up and running, and as a consequence, they couldn't financially recover. So there's a lot of exposure there for businesses that aren't currently not only just backing up their data, but having the right security posture in place to navigate these attacks. So these are the kind of managed services that we have. We've got the managed backup, the offsite replication, the disaster recovery, and the cyber resiliency as well. So just to take a bit of a deep dive into these. So tier 1 is what we call the backup as a service. So this is where we offer that enterprise grade backup solution, local recovery, and archiving on a per terabyte consumption based model. So what you consume through the service after dedupe and compression. Typically, Rubrik have quite a high barrier to entry. So they use their smallest appliance is 30 terabytes. So for a lot of organizations that depend on how much data you have, you may be considerably less than that. And again, you may tip the scale in terms of the size and eligibility for certain appliances, which means that you may have to buy a bigger appliance, which ultimately means you might have a lot of unused capacity that you're paying for that you don't necessarily need or will ever need. So what we can do through the things of economy of scale is we can lower that barrier to entry to provide that enterprise grade backup solution for the smaller businesses, and it allows us to protect customers from any scale. So the smallest customer we have is down in the terabyte, and for them it's absolutely business critical. Their whole business operates on having this data accessible and secure. So we've got full backup, offsite replication, disaster recovery in place, and then on the other end of the scale into the multiple petabytes, we've got organizations like KPMG, Disney, and Schroders. So that's the two kind of polar opposites, and then we've got everyone that falls in between that. So we can protect all customer environments, whether it be on-prem, private or public clouds, or hybrid models. We're able to then work with customers through that journey of going from on-prem or any migrations to the cloud. We can protect if they've got a big on-prem heavy footprint. We're able to protect that throughout the term of the contract, and as and when they migrate off and up into the cloud, we can reflect that, and we can work and protect those workloads as and when customers migrate. So the consumption model includes all of the necessary hardware, support, and software costs rolled into one per terabyte fee. So there's no upfront costs involved for any hardware or onboarding. There's no kind of hidden professional services costs. It's all rolled into that one fee, and we'll take full responsibility for the maintenance of all the appliances. So if a disk was to fail, for example, we would have notified you, and we'll have that shipped out the next day. And this then provides you that logically air-gapped immutable backup solution. So tier 2 is what we class as the replication, where we provide that physically air-gapped offsite replication. This can be completely location agnostic for data sovereignty. As I mentioned, we've got 2 data centers in the UK, one in Manchester and Reading. So for any customers that have got footprint globally and EMEA, we've got data centers that can provide that data sovereignty as well. This is something that we always discuss with customers, because in those events of a traditional disaster recovery, fires, floods, and thefts and things like that, we need to be able to have an offsite copy to restore back from. And again, more and more through the rise in attacks, insurance providers are kind of mandating 2 kind of fixed goalposts, and that's, do you have an immutable copy of data, and do you have an offsite secure copy of data as well? Otherwise, they simply just may even give you an extremely high premium or not be willing to insure you at all. We have a lot of customers that go through those reviews and then come back to us and say, look, I've been given 90 days to sort this out. And again, it just builds up that security posture for customers, having a kind of on-site secure copy and an off-site copy elsewhere and be maintained under a different network. And this doesn't have to be full replication. It can just be partial replication on business critical data. So there's complete flexibility in that aspect. And then once we have a copy of that data, we can then look to build out a full disaster recovery solution with customers. And again, this is something, if we go through replication, we always discuss with customers around disaster recovery. What are we going to do if the worst were to happen? How can we minimize that downtime? How can we recover the operations quickly and securely after an attack? And there's a lot of kind of influence and factors that can come into play. So Salvation Army are a customer of ours. And at the point of implementation, we were setting up the Rubrik estate. They were actually hit with ransomware. So because they had a global footprint, they actually had their hardware seized by the FBI globally for an investigation, and that was held for that crime scene for 6 months. So at the point of implementation, we had to spin them up in our data center for 6 months during that time that it was seized during the investigation. So it's things like that. It's not just necessarily the thoughts of if our data center was to go out, what do we do? It's in terms of a cyber attack. So they were hit with a cyber attack and lost access to their hardware for 6 months. So had they not had a managed kind of disaster recovery plan in place, they would have then had to have gone out and bought an extensive amount of hardware at some great cost just to run for those 6 months. So which can, I mean, that could be detrimental to a lot of organizations if they couldn't spin up and elsewhere. So it's again, it's always conversations that we have with customers. We don't charge for having to invoke for DR as well. If you were to be hit and we had to invoke DR 4 times in a year, then there's no cost. We don't feel it's necessary to delay that process and ask organisations to raise a PO for £20,000 just to invoke DR. We always test annually to prove the recoverability of all data as well. So we work for a full disaster recovery plan with every customer at the point of onboarding to run books and playbooks of how this process would go. And in terms of kind of turnaround times for any kind of P1, we have an SLA of 15 minutes to return back to customers. So very efficient, and customers will always have that plan for auditory purposes as well. So just to give you an idea of what a typical kind of architecture would look like, whether customers have one data center or they've got 2 data centers, or they can replicate that data across to our data center. And we've got the option for all the remote sites as well. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And so lastly, just to touch on is the cyber resiliency. So this is the enterprise edition from Rubrik. So this came about where Rubrik in the last couple of years came to the realization that the Rubrik boxes themselves actually have so much compute that not only can we just back up that data and become the market leaders in protecting the data, we can actually put that data to use. So we can run things like the discoveries for any sensitive data within the environment. We can assign risk factors, run data for classification, all in the back end. So this is all within the backup environment. So it's not touching the live production site. So we can be really aggressive when we're running kind of these threat hunts in the backup environment, run any kind of ransomware investigations, all in that back end. So if an attack was to happen, we can locate and find out how the malware got in and where it's been and what data has been touched, which puts customers in a very advantageous position when it comes to things in regards to GDPR and regulation, with that 72-hour timeframe of knowing that malware has breached your environment. Can you report on what data has been hit? Because we know that comes with quite substantial fines and penalties as well if you can't. So this kind of just summarizes the journey of that Rubrik zero trust data security. So in that first stage, we're looking at that preparation. So we're protecting that data wherever it's located. And then we're looking to investigate that data for any anomalies through the use of ransomware investigation. And then we move into the second stage of kind of detection analysis. So we're running those sensitive data discoveries. We're looking to find and locate where that sensitive data sits within the environment. So in the event of attack, we can see what data has been breached and what the risk is to you and the exposure to the business. And in that third stage, we're looking for the containment and recovery. So we're looking to discover the point that the malware had entered the environment, what data had been breached. So then we can quickly go through and identify the cleanest and most recent copy of data and really kind of limit that blast radius. And then through things like the orchestrated recovery, we can then go in and surgically recover from each server. So for example, if server A had been hit 6 weeks ago, but server B had only been hit 2 weeks ago, we don't have to go back 6 weeks across all servers and maximize the data loss. We can go in 6 weeks and 1 day for server A and 2 weeks and 1 day for server B. So we can be a lot more strategic in our recovery process to limit that data loss. And the Rubrik M365 protection. So this is something that we offer customers for not only just their on-premise and production data, but the M365 protection as well. This is a solution that it's full SaaS, so there's no hardware required. Implementation from our side takes anywhere between 30 minutes an hour to have a customer set up and running. It's really easy for us to configure retention policies on a per user basis, and we can go as granular as kind of being able to recover a file and point in time of recovery. And it gives customers that complete control. So whether we're protecting their on-premise or cloud or 365 or all three, they can do it all from the same platform, and it gives them that complete kind of peace of mind and protection across the whole environment. And just to give you a bit of a background of Rubrik and Microsoft's partnership, so Microsoft actually invested £70 million into Rubrik solely to develop their M365 backup solution. Some of you may be aware that under kind of Microsoft Service Agreement Clause 6B, they actually state themselves that all customers should have a third-party backup solution in place, because Microsoft don't hold the responsibility for your data. They simply just provide the infrastructure. So Microsoft and Rubrik have an extensive kind of roadmap, and they're continuously developing the the solution. So any kind of features and functionalities that get brought in get drip fed down into existing customers. So that's just a bit of a background on Microsoft and Rubrik's partnership. So this slide kind of just highlights the managed service and the wraparound that we provide. It really is a true managed service. Every customer is the managed service we see is very much from a co-ownership perspective. So every customer will still have access to the Rubrik estate. They can still go in and set their own policies, and they can still go in and navigate the Rubrik platform itself. And then we can take on the management for you. So we've got a lot of customers that simply, they don't even want to hear the word backup. They just want to know ADP exists and things still work. And that's absolutely fine. So because as standard, we provide that full managed service. And then we've got other customers that may have internal resource or would still like to take on certain aspects of the backups. So again, at the point of implementation, we outline these processes on who's got responsibility of what. So it really is a true managed service. And then just to touch on lastly for myself is the protect view. So in terms of that co-ownership perspective of the managed service, we have a tool called Protect View that we've engineered in-house, and this is what we use to manage all of our 450 customers worldwide. And every customer that we onboard gets access to their own portal as well. And essentially what this does is it pulls the information from the Rubrik tenancy and summarizes it in a daily report that we send out to every customer every single morning. So essentially the idea is that they can get that peace of mind. They can go in the morning, see their backups are still working, see everything that's being backed up, and then they can move on. And instead of them having to go in, although they can do, and they can go into the Rubrik portal and they can go through and navigate it themselves and see what they need to, we can just simply summarize that in a full report for them that they can then do with what they will. So this is fully customizable. So if there's anything kind of niche or specific that customers want to see, this can be engineered in. But again, it allows customers to go in and see the terabytes that are being stored, archived, replicated if there were any errors. And again, that's a full regional view, and we can take a deep dive into the cluster view and see the success rate, and then we can move on from there. So that's everything from me in terms of the overview of the services. And these are just a few other customers that we have, the Salvation Army that I mentioned on, Disney, Schroders, one of our first initial customers that have grown substantially over the years. So perfect. So that's everything for me. So Justin, I'm happy to hand over to you.
So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to run through on a very high level the whole of the Rubrik platform. So Rubrik is all managed, so everything that Rubrik can manage is done through a single management platform called Rubrik Security Cloud, which is what we are seeing here. And Rubrik, as Cameron's alluded to there, it's broken down in. I'll break it down into two key areas. First of all, is that foundation license, the basic backup and recovery and restore functionality, and that is the data protect, or Rubrik called data protection, and you've seen that on the left hand side. And then those enterprise features on the right hand side, so that data threat analytics, looking for that clean, helping you identify when that the last known clean copy of your backups is, so you can restore very quickly and get back to that point, and the data security posture as well around looking for sensitive data into there. And I'll go into all of these over the course of the demo, but first of all I'll go into the data protection, so the backup and restore functionality. So what we're seeing here, we're seeing a dashboard. This is a fully customizable dashboard that you can have any of your administrators or anybody that you want coming into here can have access to, and you can see all of these squares are widgets, and I can go from here. I've got a lot of different widgets that I can put on to my dashboard to present the most pertinent information to me that I need to see when I log in. Now this leads me down a road of looking at RBAC controls and controlling who can see what, and Rubrik have very granular RBAC controls all the way down to putting those roles into place for maybe just an auditor or somebody who can just do restores but can't play around with policies. Or you can even go down to the very granular object level, so for example giving a SQL DBA access to the databases that they manage and allowing them to fully manage them, create their policies, check the backups, do the restores themselves, but only the databases they manage. They can't see anything else. So you can go down to a very, very granular level. Now, talking about those policies, Rubrik call a backup policy an SLA domain. And I'll go into and show you how easy it is to set up these SLA domains. Now, Rubrik take a slightly different approach to creating policies, in that they look at the data and the data requirements that you have in terms of the frequency and retention policy. So when creating a policy, you focus on those 2 points, the frequency and the retention, and it doesn't matter where that data is lying. It could be within a vSphere or VMware VM. It could be on a SQL database. It could be on a NAS system, or even in 365, or even into the cloud on a VM, Azure VM, or even an AWS EC2 instance. So hopefully simplifying your policies no matter where that data lies. So rather than having to manage 2, 3, 4 different types of policies, you can simplify that and just create one policy spread across multiple different types of platform. But just for this this example, I'll just select the VMs and the SQL databases. So once you've selected the types of workloads you want to protect by this policy, you then create a frequency and a retention policy depending on the data. So if you want to take one snapshot a day, one backup a day, and keep those for 32 days, take a monthly backup and keep those for 12 months, or maybe a yearly backup and keep those for 7 years. You can see how flexible this is in terms of designing your policy, and you can create as many of these policies as you wish to spread along, so depending on those data requirements. We've got the usual snapshot windows. If you've got any sensitive applications that don't like having a backup, or you don't want to take these backups during live and production times, you can do that out of hours if you so wish. Now, once you've designed the frequency and the retention period for the data you want to protect, then we want to talk around archiving. Now, typically what customer will do will keep data in that hot level tier of storage on the appliance for a certain amount of days. This is the amount of time that you think that you will need to potentially recover from. Now, customers will go from anywhere from 14 days up to about 90 days in terms of that ability to recover very, very quickly from any sort of incident. Any times outside of that and for longer, that is usually just for compliancy reasons, and you don't need that sitting on expensive spinning disk. That can then be archived off into a lower cost tier of storage, so an archive tier, and that can be anywhere. That archive location can be anywhere from a NAS box sat under your desk to another SAN sat in a different data center, to a cloud provider, public cloud provider like Azure blob storage or an S3 bucket, or even a third party for someone like Wasabi. So you can choose your archiving location, and this is done on a per policy basis, so you don't have to archive everything. You can just archive particular workloads that you want to select. Then we move on to the replication that Karen was talking around there. So replicating that copy of the backup. So once Rubrik takes a copy and has completed a backup, they will replicate that data to another Rubrik appliance somewhere else. Now, we at ADP have our data centers that can walk through, and we can then be that second copy, be that offsite, physically separated, logically air-gapped copy of your backups. So should the worst happen, something happens with the appliance on site, or your data center goes wrong, fire, flood, or theft, or even a cyber attack, we've got a copy of your data offsite, and we can use that to spin up in our data centers and restore into our data centers to do that. And we can replicate that. We can replicate a couple of copies as well, so you can keep one locally and keep one offsite. Then going on to the couple of application features here. So because I selected SQL, I can do the log level log transaction backup, so I can go down to the near minute RPO with SQL databases, or because I selected VMware, we've also got that near zero RPO for continuous data protection, protecting those real critical workloads. And then we move on to retention lock. Now, Rubrik is, as Cameron's mentioned, a immutable by nature, so it's out of the box immutable, and the data store of the appliance is logically air-gapped off the network. So it means that it can't be accessed via normal protocol. So if you do get compromised and somebody does get in, they can't actually see the data. But one way round that would be to go into the system and then change your retention period from 1 year down to 0, effectively aging out your backups and getting rid of them that way through natural aging. Now, Rubrik introduced this idea of a retention lock, which brings in a two-person rule, two-person authorization to make changes to the retention period of this policy. So you have a doer, a requester, and an authorizer, and you can either have that internally or you can have that authorizer as a third party, such as us at ADP or even Rubrik themselves. So to be able to change a retention period on a policy, you would need to go through a proper approval process and a documented paper process. So then nobody can just come in maliciously change the retention lock. And then it's as simple as that. You give it a name, give it a description, and you create your policies. Now, applying the policies are really simple, depending on the type of object that you are protecting. So I'll give an example and show you through some VMware machines. I've got a list of all my VMs that I've got in my hypervisor. I can either apply it to the vCenter server itself. So any new machines that get spun up would automatically have a default policy. I can apply it via tagging, so using any attribute of a machine to create a tag and apply a policy by that tag, or I can manually select the machines, click manage process, manage protection, and select a different policy of the list. And you'll be able to see in this list I've got quite a few different machines, and they've all got different policies assigned to them. So very granular control around the data that's on those and how you back those up. And it's just exactly the same whether it's a VM machine, whether it is an Azure VM. So I've got my Azure VMs here. And again, I can do it on the subscription. I can do it based on a tag, or I can manually do it. And it's also the same whether it be for the 365 data. So here are all my objects within 365. I've got my Exchange users, I've got my OneDrive users, I've got my SharePoint sites, and again I can apply it at the subscription level, or I can manually assign them to different in this case SharePoint sites, so you can get very granular in your application of the policies. Now, hopefully by this point, what you've done is you have you've created your policies, you've applied them to your machines. Then what happens when the worst goes on? What do you need to do? And I'll talk you through a couple of recovery scenarios. So something's gone wrong, an application's crashed or a server's blue screened or something like that. We need to do some recovery. So I go in, I select the machine that I want to do, and I get presented with this calendar view. And you can see here, I've got all these green dots that are saying all my backups have been successful. I hover over the days and I can see that yesterday I had six snapshots. Going further back, I'm only taking one a day. If I go even further back to maybe like the beginning of January, you can see that even though I have archived this snapshot, it is still instantly accessible. I can still go into this interface, find it, click in through, and be able to download it from the archive straight away onto the appliance to be able to do a restore. You'll notice at the top here, I've got this search functionality. So when Rubrik take a backup, they index that backup, and therefore making all the files and folders searchable and recoverable independent of the actual VM itself. And even though this snapshot, this backup is in archive, it's still fully indexable and searchable, so I can recover from it. Now, let's say I know the date and time. So if I go into yesterday's backups, I can see that I've taken 6 backups here. Again, I've got a search functionality to search through these, or I can pick the date and time that I actually want to go into, and then be able to go into it and do the actual recovery of the go through my recovery options And it's just taking a moment here. It's, what do they say? Never work with children, animals, or live software. Then we go into a different one. Hopefully this one will be a bit quicker. And what this should do is this should give me my recovery options that are available. So again, I can either go into and do a recovery, a file recovery, file or folder level recovery. So I'll go in, I can then have a look. This isn't just working, just bear with me. I'll pick a different snapshot. Oh, it's not playing ball, but that would, if I go into the recovery files, that would give me the my directory structure, and I could pick and choose the actual files I want to recover without having to recover the whole of the machine. I've got my usual VM level recovery, so I can create a new machine here. I can do an in-place overwrite the existing existing machine, or Rubrik have another feature called a live mount, and what this does is it gives the ability to instantly recover a machine. And again, I can create a live mount, which creates a separate machine, or do an overwrite. But what it does is it uses the Rubrik data store, the Rubrik appliance as the data store, rather than the actual hypervisor, which gives, I'll say, near instant level recovery. We tested this out and we did a 6 terabyte VM in about 4.5 minutes, which, okay, isn't instant, but I think we can probably stretch stretch that terminology to include instant in this case. So very, very rapid recoveries using this live mount functionality, and I can see how easy it is to reboot or restore a machine using this live mount capability. You select the cluster, the Rubrik appliance that you want, then you can choose your networking options, and this is where we can start to think about maybe introducing some features around cyber recovery and using this feature to restore a machine but off your production environment, and keep it separated, so we can select host only, and then we're booting into what we could almost consider a clean room, that this machine will be up and running. You can either have it no networking options, or even a segregated VLAN, maybe, to be able to just have internet access. You get it up, you get it quick, and then you can do your security check-in on there, so you can run your security tooling to make sure it's clean before you then migrate it back into a production environment. We also have customers that use this facility while it's not designed for it, but to test their Windows patching. So they can bring up a couple of machines in this segregated area, do their Windows patching testing, spin those down, and then push that out once they've confirmed that the actual patches are correct. So I'll just select host only, click on next, and then go on mount, and that should go ahead and then mount this machine using the Rubrik appliance itself. And we should see, and in true Loopy fashion, here's one that I created earlier. Hopefully while I'm talking we should see that one just pop up in a minute or two, but from here I can then either unmount it and remove the machine, or migrate this data store back into production environment. Not only is it that restricted, not only is that available to VMs, so vSphere or Azure VMs or Hyper-V Nutanix machines, but it's also available to do this for mounting databases as well, so SQL and Oracle. So we've got this very quick ability to restore data to be able to access. And it's the same process whether it is on premise or whether it's in the cloud or in the SaaS services. So again, if I've gone away, I've come back, I'm missing a file within my OneDrive, I can click on my user here. I've got the same look and feel of the restore, so I can see the recovery points. I can search for the file names, or I can drill down into it and I can then go into recovery, and I have my OneDrive structure here that I can go through and select my files that I want, select the recovery type, and then confirm what I want to do. So I've got lots of options around here, and it's the same look and feel no matter where that object where that object is. So hopefully that's given you quite a good overview of the backup and restore options. Now, in the kind of 10 minutes left that I've got, I want to go over those enterprise features. So first of all, the data threat analytics. Now, these tools are really designed to help you recover from a cyber recovery. The old traditional way and the usual recovery options are very, I won't say very easy, but you have a very defined point in time when something happened, a server crashed, or a fire hit, or a flood hit, or you had a power outage, whatever it may be. You have a very clear defined point in time when it happened. But with cyber incidents, sometimes that line isn't quite as clear cut, because a piece of malware may come in and be sat within your environment for a day, 2 days, a couple of weeks, just doing its reconnaissance, and then once it's found out, maybe found the weaknesses within and the vulnerabilities within your environment, then it downloads the malicious payload and then goes to work. Now, the last thing you want to do then is, let's say it was an encryption event and you started seeing the encryption at midnight on a certain day. You might be tempted to go back to the previous days and restore and recover from there. However, all you would be doing is introducing the bit of malware back into the system and probably get hit a couple of days later. So Rubrik introduced these tools. So first of all, so under the data threat analytics, there's 3 key areas. So you've got the anomaly detection. Now, this differs slightly from your traditional kind of like AV approach, where you are scanning and looking for a specific file or a malicious bad actor. What this does is this actually looks for your indicators that something may be wrong, an anomalous event that might point towards that there's something untoward going on within your network. So in here, we've spotted something happening on 3 of our servers. We can see here that we've seen some deletion, addition, and suspicious events. And if I drill down into one of the actual servers, we can see that the suspicious event here was because it was synonymous with a ransomware encryption event. And we've got a timeline that we can recover, so we can see when all of these events happened, and we can actually then browse through and have a look at the actual affected files by this event, and we can see that this document was deleted and then a new one was added, and it was suspicious because of it was encrypted. Now, this then points out we know which files were encrypted. We know which was the last time that file was modified. So I can very quickly and easily just select all the files that were affected from it, and then I've got my recovery options, and then I can do a recovery. It's quickly and efficiently pointing to the last known good copy of it and giving you that ability to restore very, very quickly. This might have been a low and slow type encryption event, in which case, to recover all of these files, you might have to go through 2, 3, 4, maybe even 10 different backups to recover all of these files. This way, we know exactly what's been affected by it, and we can recover all of them en masse. We do it once and we do it well. So once we've recovered the files, what we want to do is we want to make sure that if we are recovering any machines, we want to know whether that bit of malware is lingering within our environment. So then we can go in and we can actually do a very specific threat hunt. So this is using intelligence from your EDR, EPP, AV tools, what your security tooling that you've got on premise, and we can say, right, we've seen this bit of malware, and I'll start a new one. So we've seen this bit of malware. We've either got a Yara rule designed around those indicators of compromise. We've got maybe a file hash or a file pattern. So if I just select file hash now, I can then enter that information in, and I'll put any old hash into here. I can select my demo cluster that I want to, my Rubrik appliance that I actually want to check out. I've got all my machines. I can either look specifically on individual machines, or I can select all of them. And then I can select a time frame. And where Rubrik has the advantage here is that we've got all of that history of your backups. So we can actually look back and say, right, well, actually, I want to look back over the last 3 months. And this will then give me visibility into when I first saw this bit of malware, which server it came in, how did it migrate across our network. So again, I can give it a custom time frame, I can have a look back, and this will then, I might need to just reduce that down. 1st of January. Was it not? Okay. I didn't give it a time. And then give it a couple of couple of file filters to maybe restrict the amount of searching, and then I can then start this threat hunt. And what this will do is this will then go through all of my machines, and I've got one set up here. I'm looking for the word ransom in any of the files here. That's what my search was. And I was looking on this machine, and I can see that I have then found seven instances of that word in the files. I can see how long that this file has been within the snapshots. Because I was only looking for the last month. This is just a little script that I've got running and static, so I haven't got a last snapshot within this time frame because it's been in my demo system for, just over 2 years, I think it is. But I could see when the last known snapshot without this file in existed, giving me that really quick ability to go, right, that's the date I need to recover this file or this VM2 without having to do multiple restores, multiple scans to find whether it is clean or not. So that's the data threat analytics. The next point is the secure sensitive data posture. And so what this is doing is this is actually looking at finding sensitive data within my environment. So if you do get breached, if something does happen, you can then report to whatever regulatory bodies you have to around what data could potentially have been accessed. So you can start to have a look for, and these are predefined out of the box analyzers. If I go down to the use, we can see I've got the typical UK PII identifiers. I can add my own identifier in here, so I can either use a regular expression or a dictionary to define, and then I create a policy, and I've got a UK PII policy here. I've selected a machine. I'm looking for these analyzers, and that will then go ahead and search through that machine for that type of data. And once we've found any hits, we can go in, we can see where they are. I can have a look. I can see these 2 files have got sensitive information hits. But crucially, what I can do is I can then go back to previous scans. So if I know that this bit of malware came in on the 15th of March, I can go back to that date and say, I know what data was on that server at that time that bit of malware potentially had access to. So even if that data is not on it anymore, you could say that data was potentially at risk during that time or during the time of this attack. So overall, I've covered off the foundation, the backup and restore functionality, be that on an on-premise VM, whether it's in a cloud or in the SaaS, in the 365 space. I've talked through the enterprise features from anomaly detection, looking for anything untoward happening within your network, to doing a hunt to make sure you can identify a clean snapshot to restore back to very quickly, and also then searching through your servers for that sensitive data to be able to report back to the IOC or whoever regulatory body that you have to do. So overall, that's what I've shown you today. I will now stop sharing and hand back.
Have either Cameron or Justin got any final comments you'd like to make?
Nothing from me.
Nope, I'm all happy.
Wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining, and as mentioned, we'll be following up with you after the webinar. But if you have any questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and look forward to speaking to you soon. Have a great day.